and welcome to today's X Connect conversation, something greater, how your inner life can support your quit. I'm Todd Nilsson. I'm going to be the facilitator and host today, and you may know me from the X community if you're active there. Hello, welcome, great to see you. We're here today to explore a powerful, often overlooked dimension of the quit journey, how finding meaning and purpose can fuel your progress in your quit. And we're incredibly honored to have Dr. Howard Koh from Harvard joining us today to share the science behind the meta-analysis that he performed. And so just to make sure, before we get started, that this remains a safe space for everybody, we've got a few quick ground rules to cover for the chat today. First and foremost, be kind and respectful. Please use this as a space to lift each other up. Healthy debate is fine, but please keep it simple and civil. No personal attacks. Be inclusive. Please be respectful of all backgrounds and beliefs. Protect privacy. You may use a nickname rather than your full name, and keep your contact info private if you wish. And keep it focused as well. So please avoid any kind of all caps messaging, commercial links, any self-promotion, politics, hateful or discriminatory language. We will ask you to stop if we see that, and you'll only receive one warning about that. And then finally, just please stay supportive. Don't mention or discuss nicotine product use on the call, except in context of your quit and spirituality. As this could be a triggering mechanism for others. We take these guidelines very seriously so that everybody feels comfortable sharing and having a great discussion. And with that, I am pleased to hand over the microphone to Dr. Howard Koh to introduce himself. Dr. Koh.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be part of this webinar because I love the Truth Initiative. I'm on your board. I want to say special thanks to you, Todd, and to Megan, to my great colleague, Barbara Way, Kathy Crosby, who's a wonderful CEO for you, and Amanda Graham, and so many others. And for those of you who know me, I'm a physician, but also a public health professional, and tobacco control is what started me on my public health career. It's been a calling for me. It's the best way I can explain it now looking back, because as a clinician trained in the traditional way in medical school, I thought that treatment was the answer for making people healthier. And of course, treatment is very, very important, but prevention, which is the core theme of public health, is really the broader way to protect health and promote health. So I got very involved in tobacco control activities as a younger physician, was involved in a tobacco tax initiative. When I became the state health commissioner in Massachusetts and later the assistant secretary for health in the Obama administration, everybody knew I was there to make prevention around tobacco and nicotine my highest priority. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm on this board. That's why I'm on this webinar. And then along the way, Todd, I did realize that the only way I can explain my life was I was answering a call. And issues of spirituality, which can be defined as what has to do with ultimate meaning and purpose and connection to something bigger, are what motivate all of us to wake up in the morning and do what we do and make the life decisions we make in terms of how we spend our time. And so I decided with some incredible colleagues to explore that specifically around spirituality and drug use. And that was an article, a meta-analysis that came out in JAMA Psychiatry a couple months ago, and caught the attention of a lot of people working in the addiction field, particularly the Truth Initiative. So here I am. And you have waited for me patiently, so I'm so grateful.
Oh, not at all. And as Megan said, maybe we'll do a follow-up session so we can make sure that we get the full hour in here. But I wanted to ask, like, for lay people, could you maybe explain a little bit about what a meta-analysis is?
Sure. So we all know that there are thousands of scientific studies that are published every day. And, you know, a typical study gets published and gets some attention and has results. And you always say, okay, that's one study. But if you look at all the studies together, what's the overall message? Because the next study could say something completely different, right? So a meta-analysis is a very respected way of doing investigations at the highest level of scientific rigor, where you bring together all the studies on a given topic within a certain time frame and try to come out with a consistent finding that can apply across all the investigations that are put forward. So, Todd, our analysis that we published a couple months ago was the most rigorous studies on spirituality's association with drug use in the 21st century. And we found some 55 studies that involves over 500,000 subjects, by the way. And again, I'm the lead author and the spokesperson here, but there are about a dozen co-authors. And we spent over a couple of years, Todd, looking into this. And the bottom line was that spirituality has a protective effect against harmful drug use. And we studied its effect across four categories: tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. What was very striking was the protective effect was across all four of those categories. We could also quantify the results. So it was about a 13% improvement in outcomes, regardless of what study you looked at. And that number rose to 18% if you looked at the marker of people who attend religious service more than once a week. So it's there, it's irrefutable, it's consistent. And we're here because when we got these results, my colleagues and I said, gee, this could be another avenue for people to use as as a resource when they're trying to promote prevention, especially for kids, and then also improve recovery and cessation. And we don't talk about it that way, which I don't really understand. So I hope this is a way to bring in and broaden the conversation about spirituality as a resource. By the way, in anticipation of doing this webinar, I had the privilege of watching Dr. David McFadden's presentation on a similar topic in front of this X program 2 years ago. He's from the Mayo Clinic. He did a wonderful job and taught me a lot actually as I got ready for this presentation. So you got some momentum here, which I'm sure Dr. McFadden and I very much appreciate.
We always try to bring great thinking and research to the fore with the X program, and I think what strikes me so much about your description of the meta analysis is that this frequently we'll hear news headlines about a study found, or this that there's this finding that's come out, but that's based on a single study. The meta analysis is, I mean, that was a huge undertaking to do. I mean, obviously, so it is a big deal that this work has been done, and then the conclusion from that about the 13% improvement in outcomes. I mean, wow, that's an incredible finding to bring out of all of the studies that you looked across for that. I
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could maybe say a little bit about the kinds of or the types of spiritual practices that were mentioned in the article as things that are being supportive of prevention and recovery.
Sure, and that gets to the next question. Okay, why are we seeing these outcomes? What's behind it? What are the mechanisms? So for people who regularly attend religious services, that's an organized effort to bring people together. You have a community that you can join in a very formal way, if I can say. So that's one spiritual practice that got measured. And again, the 13% you mentioned, Todd, becomes 18% when you look at people who attend services more than once a week. But then we also noted that in the studies that we captured in this article, by the way, we have three huge tables in this meta-analysis. So if you want to look at any detail of any of the 55, you're welcome to. Of the 55, by the way, about 2/3 directly address tobacco singly or in combination with other substances used. Um, but people can practice spirituality in so many different ways: through mindfulness, through meditation, through prayer, or more informally, communing with nature, or through music. I'm a big vocalist, by the way. I'm not going to perform today, but I mean, there's a connection to something bigger through the arts. And I think that's another underappreciated part of this whole story. And so there are infinite ways, an infinite number of ways for people to discover and lean into what gives them a sense of ultimate meaning and purpose in their daily lives. And Todd and Megan, this is what we're trying to encourage through an effort like this. If you're wrestling with tobacco addiction or committed to prevention for the next generation, especially with nicotine products out there, thousands of them, can we use spiritual practice and the whole concept of spirituality as an avenue for people to lean into when they haven't been explicitly encouraged to do that before?
It's interesting that you should bring in the community element of this work. While we were troubleshooting your connection to come back in, Megan and I were talking a little bit about some experiences that I've had in the years that
Oh,
I've been able to help, support the X community, and the people who have come there have I've called them a number of different ways in which they express spiritual approaches, to their quit. And, often it's, things that are on the face of it, faith-based, kinds of quitting efforts. We have the Christian Quitters group
right.
in the X community with nearly 500 members. New people join it every week. Very active, dedicated group, and they share scriptures and prayers. Within that group is an expression of faith within that private group. But more generally across the community, you'll find people expressing the arts, as you mentioned. Like there are people who are doing craft projects and they post pictures up
Yeah,
on a dedicated space there, to share with others, or they talk about a walk out in nature.
sure.
One of our biggest discussion threads out there is called "Let's Get Moving," and it's got tens of thousands of posts on it from people just talking about what they did to be mindful about getting up and moving their bodies, today. And so it's validating to hear the research backing up how coming together as a group and sort of sharing an activity, a meditation, maybe something you might not initially think about as a spiritual practice, but there's a
Right,
spiritual dimension to it,
right.
from what you're saying.
Todd, if you don't mind, at this point, I gotta express my gratitude to three people who started me on this journey in hindsight. Two of them were my parents, who were immigrants from Korea who came to this country searching for the American dream, searching for freedom and rights. And when you grow up in an immigrant family, your parents are teaching you every day that their sacrifices and their journey to this country was for some purpose. And that if we are going to sacrifice while we're in this country as a family to make some contributions to society, you have to have a sense of appreciation and gratitude for the freedom that we have in this country. And then when I was a Yale undergraduate and Yale Medical School student, I had the privilege of listening to the Yale chaplain in his services, Reverend William Sloane Coffin. Bill became a mentor for me, somebody I treasured. He passed away now over a dozen years ago, but I think about him every day. And when I was a medical student, he was the one pushing us to think about the bigger picture, about uh, not just helping the patient in front of us for us doctors, but also helping populations and neighborhoods and our country and even the world. I mean, he had the broadest vision of what health is all about. And Todd, I'll never forget once he preached and said from the pulpit, um, the fundamental spiritual emotion is, and I was at the edge of my seat. I thought, what's he going to say? Love or charity or something kind of trite? And he said, gratitude. And I fell back. I'll never forget, I fell back in my seat because that was not the word I was expecting. And in hindsight, what he was saying to us public health people is our good health is a gift. Okay, we didn't earn it. If we have it, we got to cherish it. We got to protect it. Unfortunately, in the case of tobacco and other areas, is there are industries trying to take that gift away from you. This is what the mission of truth is. And so if we start off with a sense of gratitude for good health, And then we try to support people who want another chance to enter recovery, and in the case of tobacco and nicotine, to have a chance of restarting a journey of health. This could be one way to do it. So um, I think that those themes come back to me, Todd, as I do something like this.
Incredibly powerful, and that word gratitude. I mean, yeah, I would have think I'd have been bowled over as well. But I can definitely see that on a day-to-day basis, within interactions that I see, within the community where the many of the people who are our mainstays of the community have been there for a long time. They're sometimes called the elders in the community, or they are pathfinders, which is our more formalized program around that. But in any of those cases, some of the people who have been around the longest and have this the storyteller designation there are coming back with a sense of gratitude because they're trying to give back to others um,
Exactly.
who are on the same journey that they've been successful at, and they see that as a way to pay something forward within the community, and they're always approaching it with a sense of gratitude about the space. They're very giving of themselves.
That's great. And this is one reason why Truth is such a powerful community. We have an incredible mission at Truth. And again, being on the board now, this is my second time on the board. I've watched the evolution over the years, and the mission is unbeatable. The mission of public health is unbeatable. And in a time like this, where public health is really taking a beating, if I can say, can we support one another? Can we try to encourage one another, lift people up, and really appreciate the sense of incredible meaning and purpose to our daily work and use that to help people become healthier? And in this case, uh, quit nicotine addiction. What better way to live your life on this earth, right? So that's what I think today is all about.
No, I really appreciate that. So and I think too about sort of the spiritual dimensions of other, similar sorts of programs like AA, where they talk about acknowledgement of a higher power, in that work. And so, I mean, I think that definitely tracks back
Yeah.
to the investigation you were doing.
So one of the great privileges of being the first author on this meta-analysis is that I recruited all the co-authors, by the way. So we have a dedicated team at Harvard studying the intersection of health and spirituality, and it's been an exhilarating ride. We still don't have the funding that I think we deserve, given this work, but that hopefully will come. But three of the co-authors, I'm going to cite them by name, Doctors John Kelly and Keith Humphreys from Harvard and Stanford, respectively, and then Mike Botticelli, who was the drug czar under President Obama when I was the Assistant Secretary for Health. Mike is a man in recovery, by the way, and he feels very strongly about these spirituality issues. And Doctors Kelly and Humphrey have studied the science and the impact of AA and published an analysis in the Cochrane Review in 2020, which is viewed as the highest standard of evidence. And so, as I was coordinating the writing of this article, I looked at the 12 steps of AA. I don't know how many of you have ever had a chance to do that. I mean, here's something that came out in 1935, I think, but I'd never, I mean, everyone's heard of the 12 steps, but how many of you have actually looked at them? And when I looked at them, they were overtly spiritual. Like 9 of the 12, I think, talk about connection to a bigger, broader power, the power of community. Step 12 calls AA a quote unquote spiritual awakening, quote
Mm.
unquote. And I thought, oh my goodness, how come we don't talk about it that way in our dry medical world? I mean, and spiritual awakening means expressing gratitude for the gift of health that we have a chance to regain when we enter programs like AA or the X program or whatever, right? So that's what I'm hoping this effort can generate. It's one thing to publish a meta-analysis, but it's another thing to see if it has any impact in the outside world. So because of you and Megan and Kathy Crosby and Barbara Way, my great colleague, by the way, who's helped me get through all this tech stuff, if nothing else, I have a chance to send that message, and I'm thrilled to do that.
Well, and we're glad you're able to come here and share that with us as well. I think that what stands out for me around that is that combination of sort of the clinical expertise plus the acknowledgement that any kind of quit effort has to involve the whole person,
You said it.
and
You
and
said it.
the spirituality element of that can't be denied. It's not insubstantial. It's very substantial
You
for
said
anybody
it.
that wants to make something stick for them. Which leads me, I guess, to another question. What advice would you give to someone who maybe doesn't feel like they have that strong sense of purpose or calling or the something greater than themselves pull, or those supportive community relationships? Like how can they begin to maybe access that spiritual element of nicotine cessation?
Well, great question. And so, Todd, you're looking at a guy who, let me back it up. We all have a journey on this earth to discover why we were put on this earth, right? There's a wonderful saying that the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. So if you had talked to me as a young clinician, I was going to be the master clinician that trained in internal medicine and cancer and then treat everybody and cure everybody. That was my initial plan as a young doctor. And guess what? That didn't work out too well because there's so many other forces impacting on a person's life. So if you had met me back in my training, I was searching and I was doing work in internal medicine and oncology and hematology and but it wasn't until I got to public health, and that was not until I was in my 40s, by the way, that I realized that this was what I was meant to do. And I got my public health degree when I was 43, actually. And then at 45, I was appointed to my first full-time job, which was the Massachusetts Commissioner of Public Health. Okay, that's quite a way to start my career. And very quickly, I saw that this was what I was meant to do. Now, I'm a professor, of course, and I spend most of my academic day counseling students who come in and they're searching. They don't know. That's fine. That's what youth and education is all about, to meet people and to have a discussion with yourself and say, okay, I think this is where I can make a contribution and this type of work speaks to me, that sort of thing. And then you know what? I'm also a very proud dad. And my wife and I have raised three adult children, and now I know I look way too young for this, but I have five grandchildren, which I can't believe. Um, so, when you raise your children and now your grandchildren, you say, okay, my job is not to tell them you have to do this and don't do that, but say, okay, can I help guide you to help discover what your purpose is on this earth? And then when they find it, boy, they become, as Bill Coughlin said, fully alive. You know that that's what they were meant to do, and you just encourage them and step back. So, Todd, that's what public health has done for me. Now, none of this has been easy.
Mhm, mhm.
The search process for me took a long, long time. It's still going on. I never dreamed I'd be talking about health and spirituality, but I've had the privilege of doing that in this phase of my life, and then to do research on it, and then to present on a webinar like this. I never would have predicted it, but here I am. So I think if people don't lose faith that there is a calling for them, if they keep having faith and having hope, Reverend Coffin used to say, faith puts you on the road and hope keeps you there. And boy, is that relevant to public health these days, where it's a very difficult time, and we all know that. So I'm hoping if we have faith and hope, we can get through this period and help public health rebuild on the other side.
Really, really great thoughts. I'm noticing there's a couple of questions that have come into the Q&A here, and I'll just kind of note Kathy's noting here. Love that faith keeps you on the path, hope keeps you there. Yeah, that's a powerful quote. I really
Yeah.
like that.
Thank you.
Um, so one of our guests, Mary, asks, could you give examples of spirituality outside of religion or any religious affiliations?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, this can just start with conversations with the people you love and care most about in the world. And as you're sharing your day or a meal or a certain chapter of your life, and you ask them, obviously how they're doing, and But then more deeply, what is giving you a sense of meaning and purpose in your daily life, and also a sense that you're being connected to something bigger than yourself. Those are the key themes. By the way, that definition of spirituality came from an international consensus conference that came out in 2013, as I recall. My dear colleague from GW, Dr. Christina Puhalski, was the first author of that, and we quote that definition. So again, meaning, purpose, connection to something bigger, that can mean so many different things to so many different people. For some people, it means religion. That's great. But for many others, it can be something quite different. I also feel that service in any way is fundamentally a spiritual act. I mean, you're really supporting another person, and you're saying, I want to try to help you get to be healthier or as healthy as possible. The WHO has this uh, aphorism that's written in concrete on the walls of my school, the Harvard Chan School of Public Health. The enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being. I love that phrase, highest attainable standard of health. And when the tobacco industry gets another customer, those customers are not enjoying their highest attainable standard of health. Okay. So that's the way I would view the work that we're doing here with X and with Truth and with public health in general.
That's amazing. So I think that that whole idea of service, you made me think. In my personal life, I belong to Rotary International, and so
Right.
part of that is about life through, serving your community,
Thank you.
the work that you do,
Thanks for doing
and
that.
and a big part of that is they've got an ethical four-way test around ways that they approach work,
Thank
um,
you.
that I, it really resonates with me. I also think too about the pathfinders within and elders within the X community who give of their time every day, and they're often there even in the middle of the night if someone says that they're having a difficult time, with a quit, and that's absolutely service, to
Thank you.
others as well.
If
Um,
I can add here, Todd,
yeah,
and I'm incorporating this theme when I teach public health leadership to my students, and I now, over the years, put forward the spirituality theme in the opening hour. When I first got into this 10 years ago, I thought, okay, how's this going to go? And will people be receptive? But students have been very receptive. And when you meet people day in and day out, and you don't know them, they often share in the open conversation what they are doing and how they're doing it. Now, that's interesting. But they don't drill down often on enough, in my view, to why they are doing what they're doing. Okay. So if in the opening conversations you share why you are doing what you're doing, boy, it can get very powerful in connecting you to others. And in the case of nicotine and tobacco, I mean, many of us are doing this work. Why? Because we've had patients and family and loved ones suffer and die needlessly because this industry is relentless, and they keep shifting their tactics. And the current situation we have is so complex. I mean, thank God for truth and that cigarette smoking is down to about 2% in kids, but the vaping situation is so complex. So when you meet a colleague in public health and they say, my mother died when I was 10 years old because of tobacco addiction, and now I've dedicated my life to try to do something about it. Boy, that is spirituality, big time. And then you become unforgettable. Can I just say that? You do not blend into the background. So I encourage my students now when they make their introductions, if they feel comfortable, talk about the why, not just the what and the how. And that in my view is a spiritual interaction.
I love that. I was even thinking about this guy that Eric Ries, the guy that wrote the Lean Startup. This is like a weird business angle for the whole thing, but like in his latest book, he's talking about organizations or companies even needing to have like an ethical layer,
Oh,
to what they
absolutely.
do, and that's being able to answer that question of why you're doing what you do.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so
I'm
that
involved very much, Todd, now in homelessness work. And I have some colleagues who have family members who have experienced homeless, and they feel so frustrated at the relative neglect from our society on the most vulnerable people in the world. And somehow walking past somebody on the street is normal and stopping to try to help is abnormal when it should be exactly the opposite. And so when I give talks on health and homelessness now, I point to tobacco as an example. I say, okay, progress in tobacco is not easy. I've only spent 30 plus years of my life on it. But 30 plus years ago, everybody smoking in this room was absolutely normal. Now it's not normal. And you got to change what is considered normal in terms of societal norms to make a difference for public health. So those are some of the themes that I think come up when we have discussions like this.
That's great. So Jordan Diaz, one of our guests here, was asking about how your research was funded for the work.
Okay, so I have the privilege of working with a couple of great colleagues. I got to mention Dr. Tracy Balboni and Dr. Tyler Vanderweel. There are two, a number of great colleagues, but let me particularly mention Tracy and Tyler. When I came back from DC about 10 years ago, I said to myself, okay, this is my opportunity to now really explore an area I know there's something here academically. So what do you do? When you have a question, I Googled Harvard Health Spirituality, and their two names came up. Dr. Balboni is a palliative care specialist at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. She's very interested in spirituality at end of life and serious illness. Dr. Tyler Vanderweel is a world-class biostatistician, epidemiologist, and he is spending his life studying rigorously the impact of spirituality and religion on human health.
Hmm.
He also, just to make this very current, has started a global flourishing study and has a flourishing index. You can go online and rate yourself about whether you're flourishing or not, whether you have a sense of meaning and purpose are several of those domains. Whether you feel like you are living a good life and are a person of virtue and character, things like that. And we all decided that our major opportunity as Harvard professors was, even though we had very little funding, to try to get the best, most rigorous analysis into the highest impact journals. If I can brag on behalf of Dr. Balboni, in 2022 in JAMA, we published a special communication on health and spirituality, which is probably the go-to article in the literature right now. It's now been cited over 600 times. And then we've done a number of meta-analyses like the one I'm just describing here. Now, this is a long way of saying the Templeton Foundation funded some of this, but it's very hard even now to get funding on this topic, and we're looking for other funding sources. NIH has looked into it a little bit, and there's been a bit of progress. I should say that when I was in the Obama administration, I learned to my amazement that there's a White House office on faith-based partnerships. It started under President George W. Bush and then continued under Obama, and then Trump won and Biden, and now Trump too, actually. It's very hard to have bipartisan efforts on anything, and that office still exists. Now, of course, under each administration, there are nuances about exactly how those efforts are promoted.
Sure.
But there is a coordinating office at the White House, at HHS still, actually. And so I'm hoping that with the little foothold we have, there'll be more funders who come forward, because you just can't ignore this. And I would like to think our meta-analysis contributed to the literature in that way.
Oh, that's great. I wanted to acknowledge, there's some great comments in the chat that have been coming up here. I know Roberta talked about, she kind of feels like she's met her past purposes, and she's really kind of looking for her purpose now. And said, you think your life is over once you've met your purposes. Did you find anything in the literature about people maybe kind of reinventing themselves, or setting a series of purposeful goals
Oh,
for themselves?
absolutely. Oh, yeah. This is a lifelong journey, and one of the privileges of getting older is that you discover new parts about who you are and how you can contribute to society. And again, Todd and Megan, this conversation we're having, I couldn't have done this 10 years ago. I mean, it was barely on the radar, something I thought I could actually contribute to. So to be able to have a discussion like this is a source of great gratitude for me. I would encourage people to just keep looking for other opportunities, and there are always ways you can contribute to society in a meaningful way, and then connect to a mission that's bigger than yourself. And again, truth exemplifies that for me, which is why I'm delighted to be on your board.
I love that. And at the risk of sounding like somebody, where you when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, kind of thing. I'm a community guy. I firmly believe joining groups,
I
being
love it.
involved with organizations,
Oh
is
yeah.
something that refreshes a sense of purpose for
Oh yeah.
people.
Absolutely. The community theme is huge. You want to hear a wonderful saying from Reverend Coffin again, how you define community?
Please.
Community is a place where a joy shared is twice the joy, and a sorrow shared is half the sorrow.
Oh, I love that. That's
And Bill had all these one-liners that, I mean, if you trot me out, I can just bore you with all of them. He's gone, so I keep his legacy alive. But no, connecting to community, encouraging one another, especially in tough times like this, connection to a bigger mission and purpose, it's hugely important. Todd, one more thing that you said that triggers a thought. As Truth is going into a broader mission of tackling, in addition to tobacco and nicotine, other substances that lead to addiction, I'm very supportive of that because that means you're not focusing just on the substance, you're focusing more broadly on the person. And what's fascinating to me as I reviewed the 55 studies is uh, lots of times, sometimes the studies focused on tobacco and nicotine use, but many of them focused on people who had multiple substances they were using or misusing, including and especially tobacco and alcohol and marijuana. So, this is one of the major public health challenges of our time, affecting millions of people, and that 13 to 18% protective effect can be applied to that denominator of millions and millions of people. Hopefully, it will have some kind of public health impact.
I absolutely hope it does. I think that's a great note for us to maybe wrap up on. I see we're at the top of the hour here.
Okay.
Um, I'm all for doing a part two for this if you
Oh,
are.
sure. Oh,
Maybe we
absolutely.
come,
Yeah.
come back and have some further conversation. But thank you to everybody who hung in there with us through the technical difficulties. I really appreciate that. And Howard, it's been a delight getting to know you a little bit and learning about the important research you've been able to put forward on this topic and just for your approach and view of all of this that we're trying to do.
It's a privilege. Thank you so much. And special shout out to my dear colleague Barbara Way, who helped me actually get on through all this. So thank you.
Definitely appreciated. Howard, if people want to continue to follow your work, where would you encourage them to look?
Okay, so Barbara Way is my WEI. Do we have okay, well, I have a email. Let's see. Um, so it's hkoh@hsph.harvard.edu. If you email me, it may take a while for me to get back to you because it's usually a big volume of folks. But no, I'm happy to stay in touch. And I see the Truth Board regularly, and Kathy and Mike Moore, the chair, and all the great group of people who work at Truth. So I'm happy to stay in touch and keep going on wherever this leads.
That's wonderful. That's
Yep.
great. And thank you so much again for being part of the webinar here. And for those of you who've stayed with us through this, or if you're watching this on the replay, would love to hear your comments, your personal relations, your spiritual practices, how you're approaching things by joining the X community, which you can do so by going to xprogram.com and then popping over to the community space, which is community.xprogram.com. we
Okay.
will see you there. There are some resource links within the community itself. You can see on Divya Menachem's most recent Mayo Clinic blog. She was talking about Howard's research here and links to the meta-analysis and as well as his bio are available there for anybody who wants to follow up. So with that said, I will bring this home and say we hope to see you out there online. Thanks again for all your time here today,
Thanks
Howard.
so much. Thanks so
Appreciate it.
much. Take care.